Number 1.
54 years ago this month, 3 boys went missing in Hannibal, Missouri, and were never seen again. Brothers Billy and Joey Hogue, ages 11 and 13, along with their friend Craig Dowell, 14, were last observed carrying shovels and flashlights around 5 p.m. May 10, 1967. They said they were going to explore Murphy's Cave, a local spot near a road construction site. The Hogue boys had been punished for exploring it the day prior. But a parental edict to stay in the yard the afternoon they disappeared wasn't enough to deter the young adventurers. In the days that followed, cavers near and far joined an extensive search and rescue mission. Because the road construction work going on at the time had resulted in a cave-in at Murphy's Cave on the day the 3 boys went missing, the most prominent theory of their demise is that they became stuck in the cave after some kind of blasting occurred. But Dowell's and the Hogues' bodies have never been found. And the cold case, situated as it is in the boyhood home of Mark Twain and his cave-loving characters like Tom Sawyer and Becky Thatcher, has been the subject of attention and speculation in the decades since. These boys were the all-American child and boy in 1967 Hannibal, Missouri. These kids lived up to everything in Twain's books, from caves and from river travels to hiking and exploring. St. Charles-based filmmaker Frankie Cambaletta, who has spent the last couple of years seeking answers about it all, said Wednesday on St. Louis on the Air. Joey Hogue was even a really big astronomer, labeled himself as an amateur astronomer, if you look through his writings. So they were just really exploratory kids outside enjoying nature. Cambaletta became interested in the boys' disappearance several years ago, upon hearing about a more disturbing theory regarding their demise, that the boys fell victim to an opportunistic killer. That prompted the beginnings of his and his co-host Chris Coder's podcast, Lost Boys of Hannibal, in 2019. The show is now into its 3rd season, and Cambaletta has also begun working on a documentary film about the case. It's not only horrific to think of how these boys ended, but also the idea that somebody would hunt these local kids that everybody loved. It is a possibility that serial killer John Wayne Gacy was traveling through and from Hannibal, Cambaletta said. A third theory he and Coders have explored, one that the Hogue boys' mother ascribed to, according to Cambaletta, is that some kind of cover-up was involved. Cambaletta told host Sarah Fensk that since first starting the podcast, he and his co-host have been able to connect with members of the Hogue family and collaborate with entities including the Rawls County Sheriff's Office and the Missouri Department of Transportation. The podcasters have plans to soon explore some cave openings in new ways. This season will maybe mark the end of the search, Cambaletta said. It is very possible that we could become closer than any other individual has, in league with the Hogue family, to find out what happened to these boys. And unfortunately, it's leaning right now toward more of a true crime opportunistic killer than it is a caving.
Number 2.
Tiffany Daniels is a talented artist that was working at Pensacola State College painting sets at the time of her disappearance. She loved dancing and the outdoors, and often spent her time camping, biking, surfing, and hosting epic dance parties at her home. Her family and friends describe her as a free spirit that lit up the world around her. She was a very trusting person. Tiffany Heaven Daniels is 5'7" with blonde hair and blue eyes. She is now 30 years old and has tattoos on the top of her feet of seeds growing into vines that bloom at the top. You can find more information by watching episode 2 of season 7 of Disappeared on Amazon Prime, or by following the Facebook page, Help Find Tiffany. If you see Tiffany, please reach out by private messaging the Help Find Tiffany page as well as the police, as the family has been working with Claus Kids and private teams to follow up on leads. Doing so helps expedite the process of verifying the tip before giving the information to police, and in doing so, helps police justify the expense of resources needed and gives faster results. If you think you may have seen Tiffany but aren't sure, you can send the Help Find Tiffany Facebook page a private message, and they'll let you know if you should contact police as well. At this time, Tiffany is believed to be a victim of human trafficking, and due to a recent tip, her family believes that she may be in the Northern California area. On the morning of her disappearance, Tiffany's roommate, Gary Nichols, stated that he heard the front door opening and closing repeatedly around 3 a.m., and when he went to see if it was Tiffany, he didn't find anything amiss and went back to bed. At 7 a.m. when he got up for work, he found that Tiffany's car was already gone. Tiffany didn't need to be at work until 8 a.m., and according to her family, she was not an early riser. When she showed up for work that day, she asked her boss for some time off to take care of some things, which she didn't elaborate on, and wasn't something that she mentioned to her friends or family. On August 12, 2013, Tiffany clocked out at her job at Pensacola State College at 4:45 p.m. and was never seen again. Due to her computer's internet history, it is believed that Tiffany did come home after work around 5 p.m. and was there until around 7 p.m. Gary stated that he was home during this time, but he did not see Tiffany or hear her because he was on the phone with his girlfriend. When Tiffany did not come home that evening at 10 p.m., Gary phoned Tiffany and was sent to voicemail. He then called his daughter Noelle, who was also friends with Tiffany, and she told him that Tiffany was an adult and that he shouldn't worry. On August 14th, Gary came home to find that the power had been turned off by the electric company, which was in Tiffany's name, and he called Noelle and asked her to reach out to Tiffany's family because he now suspected something was wrong since the power had been cut to the house. On August 17th, Noelle finally reached Cindy, Tiffany's mother, who immediately filed a police report, which was passed to the Pensacola Police Department for jurisdictional reasons, as Tiffany lived within the city and her parents did not. Within this time, Gary decided to move out and gave his key to Cindy, who did not previously have a key to her daughter's home. The next day, police requested access to Tiffany's home, and Cindy met them there so she could open the door for the police to go in and search the home. Inside, they found Tiffany's camping gear and concluded that it did not appear that she was planning a trip. They then issued a bolo for Tiffany's vehicle and a press release regarding her case. Her family does not believe that Tiffany would have committed suicide, as she cared so much for the people in her life, and also in part to the fact that she had upcoming plans to host a dance party and to visit her boyfriend, who moved to Texas the day prior to the date she went missing. Tiffany's friends organized a campaign to find her and started to canvass the Pensacola area with flyers. Due to a tip on August 20th, they found her car in the very last public parking lot on Pensacola Beach, near Fort Pickens. Tiffany's personal items were found in the car, such as her bicycle, phone, wallet, clothes, paintings, and other personal items. It did not appear that anyone had attempted to rob the vehicle, though 3 fingerprints were found, 1 on the driver's side door and 2 on the steering wheel. These fingerprints did not match Tiffany or anyone that they had investigated, and also did not match anyone's fingerprints that were already in the system. Sand was found on the bicycle and on the tires, but was not found on the floorboards, which mean that Tiffany likely went for a ride and then stowed her bike, but for whatever reason, did not enter the vehicle herself. Due to the fact that her body has never been recovered from the water or washed up onto shore, authorities believe that it is unlikely that she drowned. Tiffany's plates were scanned on the toll bridge leading to the beach at 7:51 p.m. on August 12th, but due to the fact that the cameras only capture the license plate, it cannot be confirmed if she was the driver of the vehicle. On August 25, 2013, the Claus Kids organization came to Pensacola, and with park rangers, 250 volunteers, 2 other search organizations, and search dogs, they canvassed the Santa Rosa Island area, which included the entire national park area and beyond, but did not find any signs of Tiffany, nor any items belonging to Tiffany. In January 2014, her family received a tip from a waitress in Louisiana regarding an older Hispanic woman dining with 2 younger women, one of which looked like Tiffany. Due to the fact that she waited over a month to report the tip, the video surveillance had already been taped over, and the tip could not be verified. I-10 is a hotbed for human trafficking and runs from Santa Monica, California to Jacksonville, Florida, right through Pensacola. The state of Florida is also back and forth between first and second for the highest number of cases of recorded human trafficking. There are many signs of human trafficking that are often displayed by victims: avoidance to make eye contact, seems fearful or depressed, does not engage in conversation, and instead allows someone to often speak for them in public, appears malnourished or displays other signs of abuse, such as bruises, has few or no physical possessions, has no identification, and may have lack of knowledge about where they are or a lost sense of time. If you suspect someone is the victim of human trafficking, the best thing you can do is stall the person, if you are in the position to do so, such as a cashier or waiter waitress, and contact authorities immediately by either calling 911 or the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888. If you are unable to stall them, try to see which direction they are heading and what type of vehicle they are driving with the license plate number. Tiffany, like every other victim of human trafficking, is only one tip away from coming home.
Number 3.
In the year 2000, Matthew Pendergrast seemed to have his whole future in front of him. He was just a couple of weeks from graduating from Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, and his family was well-to-do, his father a prominent plastic surgeon. By all accounts, Pendergrast was a happy, well-adjusted individual who was looking forward to graduating and pursuing his dreams, but this was not meant to be, as he would one day drive off in his car and seemingly keep on going right off the face of the earth to leave bizarre clues in his wake. On December 1, 2000, Pendergrast left his home to go to a regularly scheduled Spanish class at the college as usual. He was seen leaving at around 7:30 a.m. in his navy 1998 Toyota 4Runner SUV and heading towards the campus, which was just 4 blocks from his residence, and it was all very routine, but he never arrived and missed the class. When he still hadn't returned hours later, his friends began to worry about him, and calls to his phone went unanswered. The last person who seems to have actually spoken to him was a friend of his in Atlanta, Georgia, where his family lived, who said that he had called that morning, and seemed to sound perfectly normal, and in good spirits. Indeed, all of his friends and family described him as acting totally normally in the preceding weeks, and it was a shock that he would just go off somewhere like that. It did not take long to locate his vehicle, but rather than answering any questions it just managed to spin more mysteries. For one, the car was found in another state, stumbled across by hunters in a remote swamp off a private dirt road in Lana County, Arkansas. This was already odd, because there seemed to be no reason for why he should have wanted to leave town and drive all the way into another state, especially since he had never even been to Arkansas and didn't know anyone there as far as anyone knew. But it would all get even stranger. The car was abandoned, and it was unlocked, with the keys in the ignition. Due to this, it seemed as if the young man had gotten out of the car and had planned to come right back, so a search was organized to comb the surrounding wilderness, and this is where it would get even more bizarre. The dank swampland made the search slow going, but on the second day they made a curious discovery just 100 yards from the abandoned vehicle. There were Pendergrast's blue jeans, t-shirt, shoes, and socks, all folded neatly in a pile, and placed carefully on the ground out in the open with no effort at all made to hide them. In the jeans pocket was the missing man's wallet, containing several forms of identification, credit cards, and cash. Perhaps even odder than all of this was a journal found hidden away within the missing man's car that contained an array of weird poetry, rambling stream of consciousness thoughts on the nature of life and death, cryptic snippets or prose, and a section that talked about seeking immortality, entities called the Silver Elves, and walking into water and becoming one with nature again. What did any of this mean, and did it have anything to do with the vanishing? No one knew then, and no one does now. There was absolutely no other sign of Pendergrast in the vicinity, and a week-long search around the area where the belongings were found turned up no other trace. In the ensuing years there has been no new lead, no new clue, and no sign of Pendergrast, leaving the whole thing in a desolate limbo of swirling speculation. One idea is that this was a suicide, and he had gone out there into that murk to disappear into the swamp, his body submerged in the muck to never be found, but those who knew him doubt this, and say he was never suicidal and looking forward to graduating. Also, if he wanted to kill himself, why would he do it all the way out to the secluded swamp over in Arkansas, a place he was not known to have ever been to, and then strip down to neatly fold his clothes beforehand? Foul play is also a possibility, but he had no known illegal dealings or enemies, so authorities came up with a scenario with a carjacking carried out by a hitchhiker who had killed Pendergrast and then dumped the body in the swamp. But why? It is unknown why someone who had killed him would carefully remove his clothing and fold it up where it could be found, though, and there is the added detail that nothing was stolen, not even the cash in the wallet. Who would do this? Yet another idea is that he had been trying to act out some sort of fantasy along the lines of what was written in the journal, and something had gone wrong. One psychic by the name of Carol Potte worked with Lana County investigators on the case for a time, and she believed that Pendergrast had wanted to be reborn as a silver elf in a fantasy gone awry, saying, "I believe that he felt that he was in a battle for his soul, that he was battling demons, and he lost." Whatever the case may be, we are again and again left with that eerie pile of clothing and the shoes lying out there. Why would he have taken those off and left them like that out in the open? Indeed, the clothing and belongings are certainly an odd clue that is hard to fit into any theory, really. One idea is that the scene was staged for some reason by a perpetrator, but by who and why? What would it accomplish to kill someone and then arrange the clothing in a neat pile? Was he accidentally shot by a hunter who had gotten rid of the evidence and then felt bad enough about it to reverently leave the clothes behind out of respect? That seems a bit odd. One thing that is for sure is that his own mother does not believe her son would ever leave his belongings in such a tidy fashion on his own, and she has said, "Our son was not the neatest soul in the world. He would not have folded up these clothes and left them in a stack." What do the folded clothes mean? Who knows? It is all a very weird case of a guy who had no worries, no enemies, no deep-lying issues, yet managed to vanish and have his vehicle found in a state he had never been to, and surrounded by strange clues. What happened to Matthew Pendergrast? Was this a suicide, murder, or something even stranger? We will probably never know for sure, and the case remains a mystery.
Number 4.
On May 30, 2012, Brittney Wood left her mother's home in Mobile, Alabama sometime between 7 and 7:30 p.m. It was the last time anyone would report seeing the young woman alive. A new docuseries, Monster in the Shadows, streaming now on Peacock, tries to unravel the mystery of Wood's disappearance, which led to the shocking discovery of an incest and child sex trafficking ring within Wood's own family. The details were graphic and horrifying. Victims told police they'd been abused since they were children by relatives and other adults. But during the ensuing court cases, which exposed the heinous abuse, it was easy to lose sight of Wood's disappearance. Monster in the Shadows attempts to reframe the story around the search for the young mother. Thomas Leader, who directed and produced the documentary, told AL.com, "We wanted to try and change Brittney from that connection to all of the horrendous crimes that her family did. We wanted to lift her from that missing poster page and create a three-dimensional character that the audience could understand and care about. We wanted to put the focus back on Brittney." Wood was 19 years old when she vanished in 2012. She told her mother she was going to meet her uncle Donald Paul Holland Sr. Her last cell phone ping was from River Styx area, where Holland Sr. lived, Al.com reported. 2 days later, on June 1st, Holland Sr. was found in a secluded wooded area, inside his truck, with a gunshot wound near the back of his head. His death was ruled a suicide, though some, including Brittney's mother Chessie Wood, suspect Holland was murdered, citing the location of the gunshot wound. Authorities believe he was shot with Brittney Wood's handgun, which was located in the vehicle, along with her cell phone battery. Brittney's best friend, Tiffany Bailey, told Monster in the Shadows that Brittney had purchased the gun for protection not long before she disappeared. At the time of his death, Holland Sr. was suspected of being a ringleader of the child sex exploitation and incest ring involving multiple members of Wood's family and his own. Investigators believe that Wood herself was a likely victim of the organized multi-generational abuse and could have been a key witness, according to Al.com. Wood's parents reported her missing on June 2nd, the day after her uncle was found, but as the years stretched on and multiple people, including Wendy Holland, Donald Holland Sr.'s wife, received lengthy prison sentences for child sex crimes, Wood remained missing. None of the investigations of her family and friends have yielded any information about where Wood might be, or what might have happened to her. And as late as 2020, investigators pursuing a tip dug up a site near the Grand Bay area looking for Wood. But the search revealed nothing. Wood was 17 when she gave birth to her daughter, Peyton. In 2018, the local NBC News affiliate WPMI spoke to Wood's then 8-year-old daughter, Peyton, on what would have been her mother's 26th birthday. "I would give her a balloon. I can't give her a hug, I wish I could," the little girl told them. "I miss her." Chessie Wood hopes that Monster in the Shadows will finally give her and her granddaughter some closure, but she has begun to lose hope that her daughter will be found alive. She recently told Mobile's FOX 10 News that while she is grateful that the docuseries has put her daughter's case back in the news, she's also finally begun planning a funeral for Wood 10 years after her disappearance. "I promised her that I would not give up ever until I take my last breath, and if this documentary is it, which we are praying it may be, we were willing to give it a shot," Chessie said.
Number 5.
On August 24, 1982, Shelley Diane Luty, 19, was working the night shift at the Lanarch Diner in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philly. Shelley's mom was also working with her at the diner. Several customers have mentioned seeing Shelley to man talking outside 30 minutes before Shelley was to leave work. Shelley's mom says she saw that same man leave the diner right after Shelley did. As Barbara was preparing to start her shift, she took note of a customer who looked as if he was trying to talk to Shelley. Barbara described him as being in his 20s, and he was blonde and athletic looking. As she watched, he grabbed a hold of Shelley's arm to get her attention. Shelley pulled away from his grasp, but didn't appear overly concerned. She spoke to the man for a few moments, and he then left the diner. By this time, Shelley's shift was over. She left the restaurant, and witnesses would later say they had seen her speaking to a man in the parking lot of the diner. From the way they described the man, it was likely the same person Barbara had observed inside the diner. Whoever she was talking to, the conversation was brief, and Shelley came back into the diner just a couple of minutes later. She collected her coat, a gray sweater jacket with a big blue bird on it, and headed for the door. After one final wave at her mother, Shelley was gone. What happened to her after she exited the diner for the last time would be a source of speculation for decades to come. The parking lot at the Lanarch Diner was small and usually filled with the cars of customers. There had been no empty parking spaces when Shelley had arrived at work earlier that evening, so she had parked her stepfather's Impala across the street from the diner. Although the street was not very well lit, it wasn't considered particularly unsafe. The Lanarch was located at the intersection of Route 1 and Route 3, both busy roads that saw traffic 24 hours a day. When Shelley walked out of the diner, it should have taken her only a few seconds to get into the car and drive away. No one knows how long it took her to walk to her car, or if she even made it to the car. Neither Shelley nor the Impala would ever be seen again. Bill Skay wasn't overly concerned when his stepdaughter was late coming home. Shelley was a very responsible young woman, and he was sure she had a good reason. His wife had been a waitress long enough for Bill to know that there were times when it was too hectic for the waitresses to finish all their side work during their shift, meaning they would have to stay late to complete it. He assumed that was what had happened to Shelley. But as it got later, Bill began to get concerned. A quick call to the diner was enough to confirm that something was wrong. Shelley had left right on time when her shift had ended at 11 p.m. Hours had passed, and there had been no sign of her. Bill called police and reported her missing. For Bill and Barbara, the situation was very straightforward. Shelley was missing, and she never would have voluntarily gone missing, therefore something was wrong, and the police needed to find her. But for the police responding to the call, it wasn't that easy. Bill and Barbara were about to get a crash course in life as the parents of a missing adult. They were going through the same heart-wrenching emotions that any parent of a missing child experienced, but because their child was legally an adult, police were much less inclined to look for her without definite signs of foul play. It had been a year since Adam Walsh had been kidnapped and murdered, and missing children advocacy groups were springing up all over the country. But there were no groups geared towards finding missing adults. Shelley's parents were on their own. Upper Darby Police Detective Nick Bratsis was in charge of Shelley's case. He found no evidence of foul play, but there was something about the case that bothered him. He'd been a cop for more than 20 years, and he had learned to trust his instincts. Even as he explained to Bill and Barbara that Shelley was legally an adult, and it wasn't against the law for her to be missing, he knew that this case was more serious than a young adult simply taking off on vacation and not telling anyone. First, there was the issue of Bill's car. If Shelley had decided to simply take off, she would have expected that, at the very least, her stepfather would call police and report the car stolen. The mint green Impala was the kind of car that would stick out on the road, and it would be an unlikely choice for someone trying to make an anonymous getaway. But there was something bothering Detective Bratsis far more than the brightly colored car. Jenny. Everyone the police interviewed told them the same thing. Shelley was a wonderful mother, completely devoted to her daughter, and she never would have left home without her. Detective Bratsis believed them. Shelley may have been an adult, but she wasn't the type who would simply walk away from her entire life without looking back. Although the detective admitted that he still had no evidence that foul play was involved, he was beginning to believe that Shelley had not left under her own free will. Police interviewed all of Shelley's friends, family, and co-workers, looking for any clue that might bring them closer to discovering what had happened on that humid August night after Shelley left the diner. She mentioned to her mother that she was planning on meeting up with a girlfriend after work. It was why she wanted to borrow the car. Police confirmed with one of her friends that they had made tentative plans to meet that night, but Shelley never showed up. Everyone who knew her was at a loss. It was as if she had simply vanished, taking Bill's car with her. Police released a composite sketch of the man who had been seen talking to Shelley at the Lanarch on the night she disappeared, hoping that someone would be able to identify him. They stressed that he was not a suspect in Shelley's disappearance, but since he had been in the area on the night she went missing, they believed he could have seen something that could assist the investigators. Unfortunately, they were never able to determine who the man was. Shelley's parents told the detectives that their daughter had previously fractured her skull, and she had a history of epilepsy as well. She had been on anti-seizure medication for years to keep her epilepsy under control. Concerned that the medication might increase the possibility of birth defects, she stopped taking it when she was pregnant with Jenny. She had remained seizure-free throughout her pregnancy, so she had not gone back on the medication after Jenny was born. Many children who suffer from epilepsy eventually outgrow it, and Shelley hadn't had a seizure in years. Was it possible that she had a seizure on the night she went missing? Seizures can cause a variety of side effects, but some of the most common include problems with vision, confusion, and a loss of awareness or blacking out. If Shelley had become disoriented due to a seizure, there's no telling where she could have ended up. A few wrong turns would have had her heading for the Delaware River, but it seems unlikely that she would have been able to make it that far without getting into some kind of an accident. The streets she would have been on were fairly busy at all hours of the day. Someone probably would have noticed if she was swerving all over the road. It's possible, but not likely. Her mother told detectives that she was unsure how Shelley would be affected by stress. If someone had abducted her or gotten into a physical confrontation with her, perhaps this could have triggered a seizure. No one heard any cries for help that night, but maybe Shelley was too incapacitated to cry out. Upper Darby detectives continued to investigate Shelley's disappearance, and the FBI soon joined in the investigation as well. It was a very unusual move for a missing adult case, and most likely had something to do with the fact that both Shelley and the car were missing. Neither the FBI nor the Upper Darby Police Department would comment about what it was that triggered the FBI's involvement. Detectives investigated every lead that came that way, but nothing seemed to be bringing them any closer to Shelley. They interviewed dozens of people, even going as far as tracking down one of her ex-boyfriends who was stationed in Germany. They asked some of the people to take polygraph examinations, and everyone cooperated with them. No one that was administered a lie detector test showed any signs of deception. One of Shelley's former boyfriends saw a model in a magazine that he thought looked like Shelley, and when he showed it to some of her family members, they agreed. It looked like a possible break in the case, but when detectives tracked the model down, it wasn't Shelley. The woman did bear a remarkable resemblance to Shelley, but had spent her entire life living in California and had never heard of the Lutys. In October of 1984, the FBI closed their investigation into the disappearance of Shelley. Their exit from the case was just as abrupt and shrouded in mystery as their entrance had been. Upper Darby detectives continued investigating the case, but they were running out of leads to follow, and the case soon went cold. They sent Shelley's dental records to a number of different jurisdictions that were seeking to identify an unidentified body, but there were never any matches. It was good, in a way, because it meant that Shelley could still be alive, but for her family, nothing was worse than the pain of not knowing what had happened to her. So what happened to Shelley? Did she have an epileptic seizure and get into accident where the car she was driving plunged into water? There are quite a few bodies of water in the near vicinity. Or was something else going on? If you go on websites, a poster there says the diner where Shelley worked was a dive and at one time had an unsavory rep due to criminal elements. So, did Shelley run into some shady types who abducted her, or did she know something about a customer she should not have? Shelley's daughter and Shelley's sister have also posted on websites about their loved one.
Number 6.
Another year has gone by since 6 teenage boys went missing in Pickering, and still there is no closure for the families. The Ottawa-based private investigator working the case, Bruce Ricketts, still has no plans to close the file. Jay Boyle, Michael Cummins, Danny Higgins, Chad Smith, Robbie Rumbleton, Jamie LaFaber vanished in Pickering 27 years ago. That's a long time for anything, let alone a mystery like this one, said Ricketts, who's working the case on a volunteer basis. The 6 friends are believed to have stolen a boat and water tricycle and taken an ill-fated ride on the frigid waters of Lake Ontario in the early hours of March 17, 1995, after a night of partying in Pickering. All that's been found was a gas can believed to have belonged to the 14-foot Boston Whaler replica police thing the boys stole, which washed up in Wilson, New York. But Ricketts has questions about even this. I just find it an impossible location, unless the boys went out into the lake and up towards Toronto, he said. I want to find out what the reality of that whole thing is. That's part of the reason he's currently waiting on reports from Durham Regional Police Service and Toronto Police Service. Both were working on the search, and he feels some of the information they shared with each other could help him answer some lingering questions. Ricketts also plans to make a presentation to the Durham Police Services Board in regards to a request for more information released on the events that happened that night. I want to get more information, he said. There's too many questions remaining just to drop it. I want to see what they did, for example, on any drug connection to the disappearance. Ricketts said the area was a hot spot for drug smuggling at one point, with illegal substances moving between Durham and New York, and wonders if the teens had any involvement. A certified cold water diver as well as an investigator, Ricketts is talking to a diving company to possibly conduct some side-scan sonar imaging in certain areas of interest within Frenchman's Bay. I don't think we are going to find very much, especially after 27 years, he said, but he wants to be thorough. Ricketts still has questions about a pair of pants containing human remains that were found in Niagara region in 1998 that look similar to the ones Jay Boyle was wearing when he went missing. Ricketts has learned from a coroner's investigation that the pants been ruled out as being his after a coroner's investigation. Ricketts still has questions about the work that was conducted, and he's going to request all files from Niagara Police in hopes of seeing for himself. I just want to put that to bed, he said. In a 2018 interview, Niagara Police Inspector Jim Lee told DurhamRegion.com he's confident in the work that was done regarding the pants. Finally, Ricketts is encouraging the families of the lost boys to register with the National DNA Data Bank. This would match their DNA against any human remains found in Lake Ontario or the St. Lawrence River. The DNA is quite important, he said. We don't know what happened, so anything is possible.